So when we're feeling this state of burnout, it's not because we're too busy, but we're too busy avoiding the things that we need to address. Hello, welcome to Authentically Aligned, a wellness podcast where we speak on all things wellness, from fitness and nutrition to meditation and mindfulness, healing, growth, self-help, and so much more. If you are a new listener, welcome to the podcast. And if you are a returning listener, thank you so much for your love and support. And I want you to know that I'm sending you that same love and support right back. On today's episode, we are talking about overstimulation. We're talking about the importance of slowing down to feel, heal, and reconnect. Understanding that there is no possible way for you to truly feel if you are constantly distracted. We live in a generation and a culture where overstimulation is so common. And with the rise of technology and social media, we are experiencing almost a constant state of stimulation. And it's gotten to the point where many now cannot even sit in silence for 5 minutes, for 30 minutes, for 1 hour out of their day. We are constantly experiencing notifications, phone calls, emails. There's always something that is coming in. And then when we experience a lull and there is nothing coming in, we're not quite sure what to do with that time, with that space, with that energy. And so it leads to things like doom scrolling, like turning on something just to have background noise. It leads to the seek of that dopamine spike and that dopamine hit. Interestingly enough, I've had a few really great conversations just in the past few days about this overstimulation that we are currently experiencing as human beings and the identification that we have with these dopamine spikes or needs for dopamine. And before these conversations, I actually read the book Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce her last name. However, I read this book and it was so eye-opening for me. It was so interesting to me. I highly recommend, especially if you're feeling like you need to just do a dopamine detox and reset and reconnect to yourself. So, based on what I learned in this book and based on the conversations that I've had with a few different people, like I said, they all happened just in a short amount of time. But it's really interesting that we are all experiencing this overstimulation. We're experiencing so much overwhelm inside of our minds that it causes a loss of direction. It causes a loss of connection, and it causes a loss of understanding inside of our own lives. Now, of course, it's different for everybody, and the way that people pour into themselves and the way that people distract themselves and the way that people get their hits of dopamine, we all live such different lives. But the one thing that we do have in common is that we are all experiencing a state of overstimulation, and we as humans are not supposed to have this high of a tolerance for dopamine. And with the rise of constant states of stimulation, such as social media, technology, always feeling the need to be doing something, consuming something, taking something on, we now have changed our threshold for dopamine, and our body and our nervous system don't necessarily know how to handle it. Oftentimes that leads in us distracting ourselves rather than connecting with ourselves. It leads to us avoiding certain feelings, emotions, situations, because we know that there is something else that is going to give us short-term, temporary satisfaction. And we're going to choose that over the sitting and feeling and dealing with yourself. That is what we have created inside ourselves, knowing that all we need is a quick little hit of dopamine and we're instantly going to feel better. But when we get that spike, there is always going to be a come down from that. And I think that it's important for us to all recognize that when we start to pull back and we start to give ourselves a dopamine detox, some would call it, then you start to experience less of these spikes and less of the come downs, and you start to experience more of a regulated state of your nervous system. So today, the intention is for us to understand how to slow down, how to feel, how to process through these things and eliminate the things that are distracting us. We cannot heal the things that we do not allow ourselves to feel. And we cannot feel in a constant state of distraction or stimulation. Unfortunately, we live in a culture where constant distraction and constant stimulation is so prominent. It has become the new norm. It has become something that everybody is used to. Everybody in some way, shape, or form is connected to. And when we're consistently experiencing notifications, we're consistently scrolling, we're consistently consuming the thoughts, the ideas, the beliefs of other people, it pulls us away and it disconnects us from our thoughts, our beliefs, our true being, and our true selves. There is always a noise that is happening. People find it so hard to sit in silence and always need to turn something on for background noise, or always feel the need to have something playing and listening and consuming something. But we as humans were not meant to consistently and constantly consume. Our culture has normalized the idea of consuming other people's lives rather than living and being present in your own life. And it's scary. It's truly scary because I have seen just in the past, even 5 years, the amount of disconnection between certain connections that I have, certain friendships, certain relationships, where social media has now taken over and caused a constant state of overstimulation. So now people don't have the desire to connect in person. They don't have the desire to spend time with people. They have brought themselves into their own little bubble. And although they feel that they can't handle this social connection, they are consistently consuming the lives of others. Obviously, I believe that this started actually about 5 years ago when we experienced a nationwide shutdown and people became accustomed to watching everything online, being in the media, because they couldn't connect outside. They couldn't get together and connect. And I think that we allowed ourselves to fall too far into this disconnection. We allowed ourselves to fall too far into constantly needing to know what is going on outside of our own lives, rather than being consumed with our own lives, rather than being consumed with what is going on inside of us, what is going on around us, and turning off the things that really have no effect or no importance to us. It's interesting because after reading the book, Dopamine Nation, that I was talking about, it brought to my attention that we are all addicted to something. We all have something that gives us that spike in dopamine, that gives us that instant hit and makes us feel good temporarily. We all have something that we use as an escape, we use as a distraction, we use to bring joy or fulfillment. And I say that with air quotes because is it actually fulfillment? Are you truly fulfilled? But we all have something. And I think it's important for us to recognize our forms of escapism, our forms of distraction, our forms of giving ourselves that instant stimulation, instant gratification, whatever it is, because likely while in the moment it is allowing you to feel some sort of something, it is more than likely taking you away and distracting you from your actual feelings. It's allowing you to avoid them rather than go through them and experience them and understand them. Naturally, this makes sense. The way that our dopamine receptors work is that we experience some sort of pleasure. And then that pleasure goes away, so we experience pain. And then, because we're experiencing this pain, we have a craving to feel that pleasure again. And whatever it is, we're going to do to feel that pleasure, to get that pleasure. So it creates a cycle. It's called the pleasure pain cycle. And we experience the pleasure, we experience the low, then we have the craving, and then we repeat the cycle. And it continues over and over and over. And then you create a neural pathway in your brain, in your nervous system, that allows you to continue repeating because it's what feels good. And your body becomes accustomed to this. It becomes the new norm for your mind, your body, your nervous system. And when you are consistently doing something over and over and over and over, it leads to a form of insanity because you have no identification or idea how to function without this cycle that you are so used to. And we use that stimulation to avoid. We use it to avoid stillness. We use it to avoid silence. And then in turn, we numb our feelings. We numb our emotions. And because we're doing this, while also receiving this hit of dopamine or this hit of stimulation or gratification, we teach ourselves, we teach our nervous system to consistently avoid these things because in that moment, it feels like the better option. In that moment, it's giving us this temporary relief. But all we're doing is training our body to not feel emotions, to not work through emotions, to not process through these emotions. And unfortunately, there are also very healthy habits that we can use to distract, that we can use as that instant form of gratification or give us that hit of dopamine. It doesn't always have to be a negative action or a negative hobby or a negative habit, unfortunately. However, I think that it's important for us to realize whether positive or negative when we are using activities, substances, hobbies, practices, whatever it is, to avoid rather than accept and understand. And like I just mentioned, when we are always doing, when we are in a constant state of stimulation, we stop feeling, we stop processing, we stop allowing ourselves to do the work, and we go into this autopilot mode. I know that every single one of us has experienced a mode of autopilot. And even sometimes this can come in a form of work, drowning ourselves in work, overworking ourselves, going from here to here to here to here to here because we do not want to deal with the things that are going on inside of us. But what happens when we're doing that is we teach ourselves a new norm. We allow ourselves this new state of autopilot, and this new version of ourselves doesn't have to be a forever version, but this new version of ourselves does not process, does not feel. And because we're not feeling, we are not healing. Our emotions need time to move through our body. And when we are experiencing constant consumption, constant input, we don't allow our bodies the time, the space, the energy to process our emotions. And then what happens is we learn to suppress our emotions, which then causes anxiety, which then causes dysregulation, which then causes inauthenticity within ourselves. We begin to question, we begin to lose faith, we begin to lose trust within ourselves because we're so far disconnected. We're not allowing our body to have a normal function of emotional processing. For me personally, the first time that I came to this realization and the first time that I had full understanding of this was during the shutdown. And before this, I was constantly consistently going. I was always doing something. I hated being at home. It was like I could not be at home. And I never understood why until I took the time to finally process. And when I was forced to be at home, and essentially there were times that I was forced and there was times that I really could have gotten away. But I recognized that in this moment, it was time for me to slow down. It was time for me to reconnect with myself. And there were so many people that were like, oh, come here and just hang out here. Nobody's doing anything. The world is shut down. But for me, that period of my life was so important to me. And I recognized the importance of this is my time to get to know myself. This is my time to reconnect to myself. This is my time to process all of the emotions and traumas and things that I have not yet processed, so that moving forward, I'm not holding on to any of that. Moving forward, I'm going to allow myself to continue processing these emotions. Now, that is not to say that now I still every single day work and process through my emotions. Like I said, we all have our forms of distraction. We all have our forms of escapism. And for me personally, I think it's movement through my body. And I think that sometimes I can justify the movement as a process because we do work through a lot of emotions. We work through a lot of things when we're moving our body. Yes, absolutely. However, we still need the stillness. We still need the quiet. We still need to sit down and be with ourselves without the movement process. It's important to have the movement process, and it's also important to have the stillness process. Anyway, back to what I was saying, that time during the shutdown was so important to me because it taught me how to be still. I learned how to meditate. I learned how to self-soothe. I learned practices to regulate my emotional and parasympathetic nervous system. And I also learned how to process and understand my emotions, which in turn created the most real, authentic version of myself. And I'm so grateful for that time and for that space. And I think that it's important that we all continue to give ourselves that time and space. We can so easily find things that we believe to be of importance that are actually distractions. And when we start to eliminate some of those things that really don't have significance in our lives, it gives us the time and the space and the energy to pour into ourselves and to understand the processing of our emotions and the things that we're going through and allow us to really feel our way through life. Now, oftentimes we think that feeling our way through life is the harder option. But at the end of the day, if you're consistently practicing the art of feeling, you're not ever going to need this form of escapism. You're not ever going to need the distraction. You're not ever going to need to pull yourself away because you are constantly and consistently taking that time for yourself. So, how does this affect our nervous system? Constant stimulation keeps our body in a low grade state of stress, also known as sympathetic activation. Experiencing chronic cortisol, which is our stress hormone, adrenaline, and dopamine imbalance leads to anxiety, leads to dysregulation. It leads to irritability. It leads to fatigue. All of these things are also known as burnout. So when we're feeling this state of burnout, it's not because we're too busy, but we're too busy avoiding the things that we need to address. And when you allow yourself to slow down, it supports your parasympathetic activation. These are things like proper rest. These are things like good digestion. These are things like processing and restoring and recovering your body. Regulating your nervous system, experiencing regulation inside of your body requires both safety and stillness. And these are things that in today's culture, we tend to shy away from, we tend to avoid, we tend to resist. And the more that we chase pleasure, the more pain that we experience. Because what happens is when we experience this influx of dopamine, our body doesn't know how to process pain. It loses the identification of processing pain. So any amount of pain feels so much more painful because we're used to a constant spike of dopamine. We're used to this constant instant gratification, this constant feel good inside of our body. And where we find the balance is in restraint from this constant stimulation and rest, slowing our mind down, slowing our body down so we're not consistently feeling the need for this constant state of high from any dopamine giving activity. So, what are ways that we can reduce stimulation and allow ourselves to reconnect? The first one could be a digital detox, taking breaks from social media and taking breaks from screens in general. Another really great way to reduce stimulation is practicing single tasking. So only doing one thing at a time. If you are sitting down working, allow yourself to sit down and work. Don't have outside noise. Don't have 5 other tabs open. Allow yourself the locked in time to focus on one single task. Even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes, focus on one single task. Allowing yourself silence and stillness. Forget the music, forget the AirPods. Allow yourself to sit in silence and focus on your breath. Practice breath work. Allow yourself to just be without feeling the need for anything else. And then using body awareness. So rather than distracting yourself by moving your body, finding more of a somatic practice that allows you to actually feel what is going on inside of your body and how your emotions are tied to what is going on inside of your body. Allowing yourself to be so connected and so in tune with your body that when something is off, you really know why or what emotion or what instance led to what is currently going on inside of your body. Allowing yourself to actually process these emotions rather than escaping from them. And then as you're reducing stimulation and you're working through this, recognizing that the goal isn't to eliminate pleasure, but it's to rebalance the integration of the input that you're receiving. Finding a balance between pleasure and the way that you feel and process your emotions. Finding a healthy balance of consumption of other things and consumption of yourself and what's going on inside of you. And all of this is going to allow you to restore your authenticity. Because when you eliminate the noise, when you eliminate the distractions, you allow yourself the time and space to reconnect with yourself, and you have such a greater understanding of who you are to your core, who you are as being your full, true, authentic self. So what would this dopamine detox look like if you were to start to implement it throughout your days, throughout your week? And remember that this is not taking the pleasure out of your life, but it is creating space, creating room, and instilling more connection, more realness, and more truth into your life. So we talked about doing a digital detox. Maybe you start by taking 1 to 2 hours a day without your phone completely. Start the first hour of your day without your phone and finish the last hour of your day without your phone, without consumption, without media, without feeling like you have to take something in. Just allow yourself to be present. Maybe then you start to slowly increase, and maybe then there's 1 day a week that you do your best to stay off your phone entirely. And then inside of that, when you are using your phone, take an inventory of the apps that you're using, of the people, the accounts, the things that you follow, the things that you are consuming, and really take inventory. Are these things bettering me? Are these things helping me? Are these things allowing me to grow? Or are they holding me back? Are they putting me into a negative mental space? How are the things that I'm consuming affecting me? And then thinking about starting to practice not just a digital detox, but a sensory detox. Allowing yourself to sit in silence for 10 to 15 minutes a day. Allowing yourself to go on a walk outside without needing to take music or listen to a podcast. Just allowing yourself the silence or whatever is going on around you rather than feeling the need to turn inward and distract yourself. And doing a sensory detox can include maybe eliminating some of the harsh overhead light that you experience near the end of the day. Maybe eliminating some of the background noise that you constantly feel like you need. Think about doing a consumption detox. Take 24 hours where you do not consume. You do not consume media, you do not consume news, you do not consume podcasts, television, movies, anything, and you just allow yourself to be. Another great way to do this, I know that something that is so common is sitting in front of the TV or turning the TV on when you're having a meal. But what would it look like for you to have every meal without a sense of distraction, without feeling like you need to be scrolling on your phone while you're eating at the same time, or without the need to have the TV on while you're eating your meal? And how much more will you enjoy your meal when you're paying attention to what you're doing while you're eating? And then maybe what you do is you replace your constant consumption with a meaningful resource like a book, something that is intentional. Maybe it's an intentional show, or maybe it's an intentional conversation. So, consuming in a more positive regard, something that is going to help you to grow and evolve and challenge yourself. The next way to practice this dopamine detox could be an emotional detox. When you're experiencing a flux of emotions, what does it look like for you to journal them? What does it look like for you to understand and write down every part of these emotions that you're feeling? And maybe in the moment, you don't necessarily have the capacity to process, but maybe in that moment, you write down everything that you're feeling. And then maybe when you've calmed down, when you've re-regulated, you go back and look. You look at those emotions and you look at what you're feeling and how that was affecting you. And you're able to process it from a more calm, collected, calm state than right in the moment when you're experiencing those emotions. Practicing daily body check-ins. Where do I feel something? And why am I feeling something? Where does this differ from what I was feeling yesterday? Or where does this differ from what I was feeling an hour or 2 hours ago? And then finding and using practices such as breath work, such as stillness, when you're experiencing an emotion rather than distracting or avoiding the emotion. Allow yourself to sit through and feel and re-regulate rather than feeling the need to pull away and avoid. And then finding ways to rebalance your pleasure. That's what this is about. It's finding ways to find pleasure in every moment. It's finding ways to find pleasure in the pain. How do you sit with the pain and feel the pain and the uncomfortability and work through that and find pleasure in that rather than feeling the need to seek pleasure from outside sources? And remember that this is a practice. So each act of restraint is slowly rebuilding that foundation for regulation. It's not going to happen in a day, but each time you choose stillness over avoidance, you are actively working to re-regulate and actively working to eliminate your constant need for a dopamine hit. Practice sitting in stillness for 10 minutes a day. No phone, no distractions, no noise. 10 minutes, sit still, sit quiet, and allow yourself to feel whatever comes up. Maybe it's not even negative feelings that come up. Maybe it's all positive feelings that come up. But sometimes we're too scared to find out. So why don't you give yourself the time, the space, the energy to find out, to process, to connect with yourself, and to get to know yourself? The stillness can be scary. The stillness can be uncomfortable because you're not used to processing these emotions, because you're not used to asking yourself these questions, or because you're going to have to face truths that you don't want to face. But the stillness is so important for you to move forward with a healthy, regulated nervous system, to move forward in authenticity, and to move forward in a healthy mindset. Stop avoiding yourself. Stop trying to escape yourself and instead get to know yourself. You should know yourself better than you know anybody or anything else. And you deserve to take that time for yourself. When you reduce all of this stimulation, it allows you a higher connection to your intuition, a higher connection to your creativity, and a higher connection to your truth. You know who you are when you allow yourself to sit and be still. Your authenticity is going to shine through when you allow your nervous system to reset and re-regulate. And when you slow down, it allows you to live from a place of alignment rather than performing from it. As we close out this episode, I want to leave you with a journal prompt and an affirmation to encourage you throughout the week to stay strong, to connect to yourself, and to feel through the things that you need to feel through. So the journal prompt that I have for you is, where in my life am I using stimulation to avoid feeling? Take some time to reflect and answer, and then apply this answer to this upcoming week. Recognize where you can eliminate stimulation and allow yourself the time and space to feel. And the affirmation that I have for you is, I allow myself to slow down, to feel, and to reconnect with my truth. As you move through your week this week, do your best to take 10 minutes a day to sit in silence, to sit in stillness. Start to implement some of these practices and recognize that slowing down is not setting you back, but it's bringing you closer to who you are and who you're meant to be. I'm sending you so much love and light this week. Have a beautiful week.